What would somebody find when they come to your installation?
It looks like a kind of ordering terminal that you might find at a fast food restaurant, where the person behind the counter presses the touch screen and then sends your order to the kitchen. Of course, instead of the kitchen, I have a big computer that plays back videos of me with various foods, and there's not actual food that you have served, but you get served
food for
in a
thought.
different way. Food for thought is a phrase that I had mentioned I would probably use about 300 times in the next week.
So you've taken video of yourself doing things with food, and then when somebody orders that food, they get the pleasure of seeing you doing something with that food.
Hopefully the pleasure, yes.
And is this somehow connected to your cultural studies work and how, yes?
I think so. And when you mentioned the nervous system earlier, I trace my own spin on cultural studies, which is probably about the least orthodox spin that someone could take on cultural studies, to a kind of lineage academically that originates here at UCSC in the 70s with the linguist John Grinder and Richard Bandler, one of his graduate students, and Gregory Bateson and systems theory and cybernetics.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, it has to do with, I think, a lot of the feedback processes that we maybe touched on earlier with Jacob when he mentioned the ways in which technology feeds back to us and the way that we maybe anthropomorphize things sometimes, the way that we give life to things that maybe didn't have a life of their own, and then have similarities that we find between those things and the ways that we behave that we maybe didn't know about ourselves. So in other words, the thing itself makes some kind of similarity apparent to us.
Makes the connections visible or cognizant.
Right, by maybe demonstrating a process that we never knew we used. For instance, when I used to go to Staff of Life to buy mangoes, I never really consciously thought about the way that I sorted through them until I thought I might do a video about mangoes for my art. And then I realized that the very form of this image that I would make in my mind unconsciously when I thought about mangoes had to do with a way that I landed from a wrestling move that I was trying to perform when I was trying to be a backyard wrestler back in 2000. So when I got chokeslammed and the back of my head bounces off the ground, then it's like that's, for some reason, for me, associated with this idea of something soft and squishy and yellow that I hold in my hand. And that probably sounds weird and awful, maybe, but...
Well, it reminds me of an NPR show that I was listening to a couple days ago where they were talking about food and certain supermarkets making it and other supermarkets not making it. And there was a specific supermarket that didn't understand American culture enough to present the food in a way. For instance, Americans love to squeeze their food. I squeeze everything before I buy it. I squeeze the onions. I squeeze the mangoes. I don't want a rock hard mango. I want somewhere in between, because I'm like figuring out, when am I going to eat that mango, right? Is it going to be tomorrow? So do I want it really soft, or do I want it to be, you know what I'm saying? So, so that's a cultural aspect of how we buy our food. That,
Absolutely. And I wish that I could trace all of them back to such logical processes as you just explained.
Well, what happened was they would put everything in cellophane, and so you couldn't squeeze it. And so people didn't buy food there because they couldn't touch the food.
They couldn't touch it.
Right. So I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, I kind of enjoy this process of feedback that Mr. Garby alluded to earlier as well, because brings up all kinds of interesting things when we talk to other people about food, when we ask questions about how people make decisions about their food. And everyone has probably a million different things, right, that they bring to the table when it comes to food, pun intended, maybe. And so how would I as an artist then be able to address all of those? That was the biggest challenge I think I faced with the piece, because my committee, who are the most wonderful committee I think I could have possibly had at UCSC, given the commitments, of course, of all the different professors who are so stretched by the UCSC and the California system in general, shrinking budget, UC budgets and stuff, right? But I have this incredible committee, and they've said to me continuously throughout the process, they've said, how will you address the expectations of your audience? What are your outcomes for your audience? And that question has continually vexed me because of the infinite possibilities that people will bring to the project, the infinite ideas that they have about food and how they choose it.
Somehow you were able to use the work of Gregory Bateson as perhaps a system or a foundation, possibly?
I think a lot about Bateson in terms of the widest possible angle that I could take on the topic, and that concerns the process of knowing, right? How do we know epistemology? What are the things that go into this mental process that says, I know how to select a food for myself? And so as much as possible in the form of my project, I do what I can to build in what I've read from Bateson about mental process and characteristics of mental process and the relations between things as opposed to the number of things. For instance, the sets of differences between things, the difference that makes a difference from one process to another. And to be able to create patterns of similarity and difference has been the goal in my videos.
Andrew Siller telling us about his work, which includes mapping.
Mapping is the process, as how I see it, of making those kinds of similarities and differences in the same way that Jacob, for his hypertext fictions, has these incredible maps of the different paths or the branching forks that the characters can take, or the stories. I have tried to consider all of the kinds of ways that these videos that I create might interact when people map them, so to speak, on this order sheet, right? They can order up to 4 different items at a time. And how will these various items interact with each other? If I was to make a kind of map of how they would go, where would it lead? What would be really incongruent if I had one next to the other? Or is there no way that I could make them incongruent, but then how could I make connections? What would be the pattern that connects these things on the map?
Right.
Yeah.
So Andrew Siller, tell us a little bit about what kind of programming did you use to create? This sounds like a very interactive video installation.
It is. I actually use a quote from Bateson on one of my posters that'll hang outside of the room, the Dark 317, where it'll be exhibited. Bateson says that he's in a metalogue with his daughter, and these are these sort of mock conversations that they would have. It's from Steps to an Ecology of Mind, and he says they're talking about games. It's not like chess or canasta. It's more like play, in the sense that maybe puppies and kittens play, perhaps. And so without any rules necessarily,
just
or
for the pleasure of
we have a kind of rules process, obviously, that governs the choices in the playback mechanism, and that's done in Max MSP. In answer to your question, Max 6.08, not 6.1, the 64-bit Max. And Ableton Live, because I love music still, and I had to incorporate Ableton somehow.
Oh.
It's great that it happens in this room 317, where they have an incredible 7.1 surround system, and I get to take advantage of all of those speakers and have sound playing everywhere.
Right. And moving, possibly, with that.
Yeah, moving.
You know what I'm talking about.
Moving around, panning through the room.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool.
Andrew
really cool.
Siller.
Check it out.
Musician, mapper, digital artist. He works with themes involving globalism?
Globalization, globalism.
Multiculturalism?
Multiculturalism, sure.
Ethnic identity?
I have to, because of the infinite number of possibilities that people can bring to this work, I had to, I thought, at least take a kind of slice, right, of my own life experience and bring that to the project so that they could have some frame of reference. In other words, so that things wouldn't be completely wild and all out and all over the place. And suddenly there would be no pattern that connects anything on the map. So the pattern that connects most of these things is this slice of my own life, middle class, white masculinity, and the foods that are associated with that kind of subject position. I think it's not too hard to imagine what those are. We look at McDonald's and the namesake of my work, Jakk in the Box, California.
Right.
Denny's.
Well, what's interesting is when you start doing those slices that are very small, they have a universal aspect in some ways, because even though I'm a woman, white, middle class, but not masculine, I can relate to food from McDonald's or Jack in the Box, or just by experiencing American life.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I see it like a bunch of Venn diagrams with the circles that intersect, and so we have all of these intersectional areas, and where I found in my project group on art and globalization with Professor Samariah Murray and a bunch of wonderful people in the next DANM cohort who you would love having on the show next year.
I look forward to.
Yeah, they will be incredible for you to have, and their work is incredible. Harris Coinstein, Josiah Burns, and Jonathan Menendez. I have to give them all mad props here, just for being in my it feels like they're in my cohort, but they give me really good feedback in these crits that we have, and a lot of it has actually been about difference and about the lack of intersection. And so to some extent I am really telling a very specific story of a particular character and that experience of that particular character, but it's hopefully going to be able to relate in a larger sense.
Would you mind giving us a little teaser of what perhaps one of the videos would be if I,
Sure, give me food.
Tell me food.
They're all done. So
I just had a hamburger yesterday and fries.
Yeah. So video for the hamburger is actually, they're almost all done. I shouldn't say that. The hamburger is. Well, I think it's me getting pounded in a hamburger. They're all about like backyard wrestling stuff. So I'm doing all these stunts. This character that I'm exploring is this would-be professional wrestler, and so and that was what I wanted to be. And so when I was doing backyard wrestling, I got pounded in a hamburger a lot of time. Yeah, so
you get
you'll
pounded
be
in
able
a
to
hamburger.
see a whole lot of.
I kind of want to see that. I don't know why.
It's going to be well because it's awesome, and that's why. So, right? How humble is that? Is that I don't know.
It's fabulous because you're a DANMite.
Yeah, I guess it works out somehow. So yeah.
So what about the French fries?
French fries, that's a little bit more tame. I'm sitting in a chair and kind of eating French fries. The French fries go with a kind of rigorous motion, a kind of rigorous maneuvering. I like to use that word maneuvering a lot of the time, and I think that I think it can be really abstract, and that's what I hope a lot of people really take away from the work, is less some of the ostensible content about why I maybe chosen foods or why I used to choose foods a certain way, but that it can be really abstract then, now, maybe in 10 years. The ways that we choose might have a very logical process behind them, like your own. And for people who can keep that straight, I admire you so much for being able to do that. I can't, for the life of me, keep that straight. I went on these strict diets to try to be able to do that, and it was like hell for me. So I just try really hard to keep it light in the project, and I try to make light of myself as much as possible. So French fries, you'll see a little bit of that.
Right on. And about how many videos? What's like the bank?
64.
Wow. And you've done these all in the last year?
Yeah.
2 years or?
Oh yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. And about how long are on average?
They're very, very short though. They're very, very short because people have said that the time that I should expect people to come in and engage with my exhibit may be as little as 2 minutes. So to give people a really fleshed out experience, I wanted them to be able to explore as much of it as possible in that kind of a time frame.
Right. And so will you be able to kind of see how long people engage with the work?
Oh, I'll be there as much as I can. I'll have 5 hours when I have to teach a class or something, and then I'll be there for the entire time.
And the entire time that you will be there, potentially,
good segue.
To see the 2013 Digital Arts and New Media MFA exhibition Ground Control will be April 27th and 28th. And I believe the gallery hours are from 10 to 4.
10 to 4.
And then May 2nd through 5th. 10-4. And May 2nd through 5th, May 2nd being a Thursday night where it's the big opening night, starting at 8 o'clock. A lot of your cohort are using projection, and so I guess it's better for the show to be later than usual. Usually in the years past it's been at 6, and so this year it's at 8.
Oh, yeah.
There will also be a free, all of this is free and open to the public, but there will also be a talk by Will Wright.
Also free?
Also free.
How could anyone pass up this opportunity?
I know. It's the best gig in town, folks. You're going to love it. It's been such fun over the years to come up here and explore the dark, and to have the opportunity to be able to talk with the artists such as yourself, Andrew Siller, and really get behind. Maybe I'll be able to ask you, after I see the French fries, like, well, wait a second, how did that come to you or whatever? How did you connect this? And
probably with the assistance of a number of stimulants. It's legal, of course, but this is the week for us. It's ready. It's go time.
Week, huh?
So everything's pretty intense. But that's part of the theme that I'm working on for my project, though. So.
And your project again is called Jakk in the Box, California?
Just Jakk in the Box.
Jakk in the Box.
With an alternate spelling. No infringement intended. I'm not making any money on this, and if I was, it would all be donated to one of our fabulous charities like you see at the grocery stores when you can put your little bag token in. Probably the Homeless Garden Project, I think.
What's next for you, Andrew Siller? You say you're going to do more music. Yeah,
music. Hopefully a lot of music, and then maybe...
We got Max. Is that a program you learned here? Or?
Max with Peter Elsey was the bread and butter of my experience at DANM. Yeah. And so if I can go on to be a digital artist working with Max, we'll do more with Max. Max for Live is really awesome. I would love... Hey, Ableton, if you're out there.
Yeah.
We'll talk. Right.
And Ableton, for our audience, is an electronic music program that allows you to compose online.
You
download the program, I guess.
You download it. It has a large online user base, and they have pretty good support in their forums and stuff like that.
So what is it about Ableton that you find so useful? Or
its interaction with Max is probably the final frontier for me, because it lets you dig into it, and even if you don't know Python, you can really dig into Max for Live substantially enough to be able to do things with the software that it doesn't do out of the box, like what I'm doing in my project. I have a mechanism that shifts between various cue points in a timeline, and there, at least as far as I've explored, I haven't found a kind of mechanism that comes with the Ableton that just does that. So it lets you say, oh, I want to do this, and then you just do it. You figure out how to do it.
And the Max is a really great program for non-programming people, because you're using these little boxes that you then kind of connect together. And
and that's pretty neat. Although I mostly just wanted to learn it for Max for Live. Honestly, I think that it can be a great tool, but most people who I know who get hooked with Max, they'll go into something else like JavaScript or something else, like processing or
Well, Andrew Siller, it's the end of our program.
Cool.
Sadly.
Well, that means people can get ready to go to the show.
That's right. The show will be beginning this weekend.
Saturday, the 27th.
Right. The 27th. Come out, folks. But make sure you want to come back for May 2nd. The thing about May 2nd is it gets so crowded, you don't really get to see the work as well. So I definitely advise that you go twice if you are going to go for. I mean, that's what I try to do, and so that I can see it and talk to the art. Outstanding advice. And if you need any help with directions or anything like that, you can go to the danm.ucsc.edu, or you can go to artistonart.com. Get the full download, all the hyperlinks you can want. And thanks a lot, everybody.